Boy. Interesting interview today. For everybody that ends up seeing this live stream, we're just going over what Kazuhiko Torishima has said. Apparently, he's got an interviewed. So, we're going to go over this, right? This is a little bit of an interesting, juicy little piece of information on his personal viewpoint. Now, remember, keyword, personal. The main keyword, personal. What's also a key thing is Torishima. Who is Torishima? The editor and mentor of Toriyama his entire life, right? This is being brought to us by Geekdom, so credit to Geekdom for getting this, but he probably got it from somebody else, so whoever the interview is, credit to the person that interviewed. But honestly, let's get straight into this, right? So apparently he was recently asked about canon. We all know how this is gonna go with the canon, canonical, canosity, what's the main canon, what's the main timeline, what's the continuity, what's this and that and third, right? What is all a part of the entire franchise, right? So apparently his response was, first of all, Toriyama was very messy. Alright, so what we say from Toriyama was very messy when he said that. The way I look at it is, okay, Toriyama didn't really care that much, right? It's more so like Toriyama is more expansive on the things that he does. He's not really thinking about the time period and placement too much when he's doing it until it's time to present it. But also, you have to take in mind that Shueisha and everybody also may not approve of everything right then and there, right? So you have to think about a lot of different things when saying Toriyama was very messy. You have to look at what Toriyama said. He think they were very messy. So you have to think about that too. He often forgot character continuity. Now, when he said character continuity, it probably mean character story, character plot elements, where, you know, the expansion on whatever the character may be doing, right? So, character continuity, let's say for Goku, for instance, right? We got GT, we've got Z, we've got Super, and we've got Daima. Let me tell you this. GT was not Toriyama. So, if that's what they mean by character continuity, let's just say in terms of Son Goku, that is not a Toriyama thing. That is y'all. That's not Toriyama. So you have to think about that, right? Now, if they just mean it in any character, like Bardock, for example, he just probably want to do his own Bardock. For instance, we look at motherfucking Dragon Ball Super. Excuse my language. We look at Dragon Ball Super, right? And we got Dragon Ball Minus. Those Bardock are Toriyama's Bardock. That's the way that he envisioned Bardock. He didn't like Bardock. He liked Bardock's story, but he didn't really go with that version of Bardock, which was by Nakasuru, right? So Nakasuru, the one who did the original Bardock, it was praised, but it wasn't Toriyama's Bardock. That wouldn't be the story, as his interview was stated, that's not how I would have done Bardock in my story. Now, when we do see Bardock in the story, Bardock is absolutely powerful. He is very strong, and he's also admired by everybody. So, in Toriyama's point of view for Bardock as the father of Goku, he's not a weak Saiyan. He's actually one of the strongest Saiyans. Alright, and not only that, he had a bit of humanity in terms of relationships in dealing with his squadron, and he had a little bit more things tied with Goku, all right, and he having a wife, Gine. So you have to think about it like that, right? So that Bardock is still technically a part of the story. It's just not the way that you would remember it. In fact, you would just go and be like, okay, Frieza's mind just, got the design of Bardock a little bit wrong. The same thing when you go and you look at guys when Toyo Taro, who did it correctly, when you see the past event, your recollection of memories may not always be correct, but it's in that mindset or mind frame of that is the time period, or that is how the event played out, right? For the most part. So what we have for the most part, that it was a rebellion that happened. Anyway, so That wouldn't be a him thing. That would just be a y'all thing. Second, he was always focused on what would make fans happy. Well, who doesn't? Alright, that was one of the things that started with Super. They were saying that they are more so for the fans' entertainment and enjoyment and everything, but also expanding the world of lore of Dragon Ball, because he has a whole lot of Dragon Ball he wants to tell, and there's a lot of things that he didn't get to tell in the past that he thought he had told. But heck, I mean, you know how many problems and things that cause where he probably just, you know what, I'm done with this. He just go off, let me focus on Dragon Quest, let me go and focus on my one shot by manga theaters and all this stuff, let me go and focus on all these other things because y'all are just not cooperating with me. Something like that, right? It could be something like that, or it could be that Toriyama just Toriyama. Alright, so he made up stories that don't overlap. Alright, now this could be a little bit conflated in terms of when he said he made up stories that don't overlap. How I take that is he doesn't make stories that actually conflict with that time period, which would be true. That would be true. That means he's never had a problem with consistency in chronological events. That means he never had a single problem with chronological events within the story. He's never had a problem with time period. That's exactly what that means. Meaning, when you see inconsistencies and certain things that happen or whatever, that's actually not Toriyama. That means it's everybody else on the outside of Toriyama that's fumbling it, that's messing it up. Right, so you also go in to look at all the stories dealing with the games, right? Like for instance, Dragon Ball Online. That was all completely, the story was all completely Toriyama. Right, that was all mine. Toa, Mira, Few, all those characters were made completely originally by him, and the story was created by him. It does not conflict. Now, Toa and Mira were interesting to create. Right, that's why Dragon Ball Z Kakarot CC2 put them in there, because that's completely by Toriyama. Again, same thing with Azato and Dragon Ball Daima, because that's completely by Toriyama. It just kind of shows you Toriyama is able to flesh out more things in the games because he gets to put more liberty in his ideas and things that he create, because they sign off on them very quickly. Not only that, not just very quickly, you have to think about how long these things are in planning. With game development and game stories, they're actually in planning for years. They're not in planning just for like 1 a year, 2 years, or something. They're like planning way ahead, and you're working on it for that long. So they're a lot more flashed out. So when you look at made up stories that don't overlap, that just means that Toriyama was a GOAT. He actually had nothing that conflicted. And you see that too when you go into the manga theaters. You looked at it, like, okay, it's been a multiverse. It's been a multiverse thing for the longest. That's how you think. Look at all the things that he likes, like Alien, Predator, Star Wars, all that. Everything is dealing with the space opera. Everything's dealing with multiverse things. It's been like that. He literally loves martial arts, and a lot of the Chinese fictional things deal with a lot of things that's beyond fictional. Or beyond science, paranormal activity, all of that stuff. Things that you cannot explain. Things that are beyond comprehensive, of like a normal, regular person. Right? Beyond science. You're not limited. So in short, there's no continuity or timeline period. I think that I don't think that's correct. So I'm pretty sure Dragon Ball's, whoever said that, I think that actually just mean, in short, there is no canon, not no continuity or timeline, because then that would completely contradict what you just said all right here. You just said all, that means you just said all this for no reason. All of this for no reason, right? Because you can't say there's no continuity or timeline when that's the exact thing that happened, right? You have Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Daima, Dragon Ball GT, Dragon Ball Z Kai. That's continuity. Dragon Ball Z Broly, Dragon Ball Z movie 8, movie 10, movie 11, movie 13, rather, all that stuff, that's continuity. You can't say that. Not only that, you go to timeline, You introduce the time. You already been introduced to timelines. Dragon Ball, the movies. The movie started that. Then you go into the history of Trunks, which was also a special. That was originally a special, a movie. You already introduced it. When you went back, you mess with the timeline, mess with the future, the past, time travel, and all that stuff. You already introduced it. So obviously, and he said period, right? That just means there's no canon. It just means everything is canon. So there's nothing to argue about. That's all this means. Alright. This is Keelan, by the way, that is doing this interview. Farah is his alias. Right. Real name, Keelan Rasmussen. Alright. So that's pretty much, and not only that, that also means that everything would be able to be in the story in some type of way. You could do whatever. It gives you the liberty of doing whatever you want to do, right? Now, there's people that's going to be like, no, it doesn't. Right? Then, when you say, no, it doesn't, that means then there is an actual canon. Right? You're gonna be messing yourself over. Because this is how canon works. Canon is anything that's a part of the main storyline and goes forward with the main story that continues the story of the character. That is what canon is. Right? Things that don't conflict with continuing on the story. That is all by the author himself. Alright. Now, it doesn't have to be completely by the author himself. The author can approve of other people, give them full on power to expand the ideas and expand on his original story. That's also canon. GT was not approved of. Right? Now GT actually, what y'all actually don't know though, right? Actually did a little bit. Right? To try to keep it within the world of Dragon Ball. But it seemed more like he just didn't like it. And it wasn't really accepted too much over there. And they kind of fumbled a lot of different things. And, it just, you kind of just snip it. Right? But you still place it in the world of Dragon Ball as a different dimension. Again, that's like a more of a what if story. What if there was no super that happened? What if there, no God of Destructions or nothing like that continuing on? Because one of the main things when Battle of Gods was presented and everything anyway came with the Frieza and all of it is the fact that Toriyama wanted to tell, what actually happened after Boo. And it was dealing, continuing on with the gods and stuff like that because he's into the god hierarchy and stuff. That's always been Toriyama's thing. That's been his thing ever since OG Dragon Ball. Right? It's Journey to the West. With a lot of different other elements and everything like that. So again, you have to look at it completely like he says, his personal point of view. And you have to look at it like that. But you also have to keep in mind, these are the people that's running everything too. That's another thing that you completely have to keep in mind. These are the people that is approving and running things behind closed doors. So how they view and everything, you have to take into account as well. Now, if it's someone like me, for myself, for example, right? Everything that Toriyama has done is completely canon. Right? Completely canon. One shots, his manga theaters, other creations in other games, things like all of that shit is canon. Why is it all canon? Because Toriyama is completely expanding on his ideas and things like that. There are certain things like, again, Tarbell. Tarbell's story does not conflict with anything. Tarbell's story is completely within the 10-year gap, right? And that's actually where Super is supposed to, Super is supposed to be doing 10-year and continuing on forward past the end of Z, right? That's the main thing with Super. So really, in reality, when you look at Dragon Ball Z Battle of God, Dragon Ball Z RL, Dragon Ball Z Yosan Goku and Friends Return, and Dragon Ball Daima, all of that technically is a part of Super. All of that technically speaking, it's a part of Super. That's why you got the reiteration of Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, reiteration of Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F. Right? And they just put him in Dragon Ball Super. But factually speaking, because of where Dragon Ball Super starts and where it goes, it's transcendence. That's what Dragon Ball Super means, transcendence. You go, it's a part of the whole thing. That's exactly to go beyond. That's exactly what Dragon Ball Super is. So, and how my eyes, I was always like, why did they even brand Dragon Ball Daima, not Dragon Ball Super, Daima. Dragon Ball Cho, Daima. Right? Because that's where Dragon Ball Super starts and it continues to goes on. Right? So you have to keep that in mind. You just keep that in the back of your head, or when you're thinking about all these different things, right? So, but for the most part, I don't think this doesn't really do anything more so. I feel like if you're a person that has followed the games dedicatedly for the longest, you already had this mindset for the longest, right? Because the gaming companies and everybody, let me say this, the gaming developers, not the company, developers and the publishers, they already had this mindset for the longest, right? And it's, again, the reason why Toriyama likes the games a whole lot. So, yeah, certain things like that, but unless they're just bad. Unless they just tear up the management, just tear up something or whatever. Like, look at Dragon Ball Spark and Zero. They just got a lot of things wrong, but they got a lot of things right too. So, don't let me get started on Dragon Ball Spark and Zero. That game was supposed to be the greatest Dragon Ball game, and it is the complete opposite. So they are not living up to their Tenkaichi 3 days. And it's... But if you like Jump Force is actually pretty good. Not as good as J-Stars, in my opinion, in terms of fun and gameplay. Because you can do 4v4 and all that. But in terms of story and everything, it's actually pretty good. It's pretty good. So... And guess who did those characters? Those main villains and those characters? Toriyama. So again, Toriyama mindset has always been a multiverse mindset. A multiverse mindset. An omniverse mindset. A megaverse mindset. A macroverse mindset. That's why Dragon Ball Xenoverse is called Dragon Ball Xenoverse. Right? It's always been like that. Right. And then with the help of his editors and things like that. Now, I know a lot of people, they'll sit up here and they'll argue, well, I don't think any of this is canon. And the only thing is canon is just the original 42 volumes. Now I present to you, okay, well, if the only thing is canon is the 42 volumes, what do you do for the Jocko? What do you do for the other things outside of that? What do you do for Dragon Ball Minus? What do you do for Dragon Ball Magic that doesn't have a manga? Okay, then you go back to GT. GT actually has a manga. It's Japan over there exclusive only. Unless you buy it from Japan. It's not sold anywhere, but they actually have a manga. They have a visual manga. Right? They have a lot of these things. So now do you count that? Would you count that? And it still says based on original story work by Toriyama. You brings into a lot of different questions. And oh no, I just think it's just literally the original 42 volumes. But it's like, well, you're just one of those people that are gonna be left behind, because clearly Toriyama doesn't believe that, right? And he's actually thankful for a lot of his editors, even though he make his little remarks and his guides and the little interview books and stuff about him. He takes jabs at all his coworkers and people they have relationships with, and teachers and people, his underlings and other people like that. He doesn't keep himself one dimensional. Y'all are pretty much trying to limit things purposely to restrict them. And he's not falling for that. And I'm pretty sure people over there, they're not falling for that either. That's the reason why they said there is no canon. That's the point. That is the point. There's nothing to fear here. Marvel, DC, all they just want you to fear. There's nothing to fear here. Right? Now, let me tell you though, a lot of them actually been knowing this for a little minute. A lot of them, they actually been knowing for a little minute when you actually connect with certain writers and things like that of different stories and franchises and stuff. They've been knowing this for a minute, but honestly, people try to suppress them because if you do that, the franchise is very powerful, very, very, very powerful when you do that. So they kind of already been knowing this, and they were trying to just keep it suppressed before it got out of it. Now that everybody's caught on, that's not going to be happening. You have nothing but to do to respect the characters. That's one of the reasons why people are sick of Screw Attack. Cause even the DC people that are these complete DC fanboys, they're sick of Screw Attack constantly doing that. When there's a lot of different things that Screw Attack does, obviously just because of favoritism in terms of Superman vs. Goku. But anyway, we don't have to touch on to that right now. That's just the main true things of the stories. Right? They just try to suppress them. Now, I'm looking in the comments and certain things where they're saying about like certain contradictions and things that will happen. Oh, it can't be canon and things like that. Now, let me tell you exactly how this works. Let me go ahead and tell you exactly how this works. When you introduce a multiverse, right, you're automatically going to have contradictions because you're splitting off the story. Still the same characters. Still the same story. Just going into different alternate routes and alternate futures and things like that happen just a little bit, and they can merge back into the story. It depends on writers. But they can merge back into the stories. For example, Wrath of the Dragon. When you got to the credits and everything, they completely showed you that Kid Trunks is the same Trunks that was in History of Trunks. That was the same thing. That's something that I actually was like, oh, Sparking Zero actually caught that. They actually caught that. That's why I said there's some things that Sparking Zero pisses me off with, and there's certain things that Sparking Zero actually does well. Right? So that's one of the things. And then you have RB2, which Hachiak, they completely had acknowledged that because Hachiak actually was canon. Right? He was actually within the main story. But the thing about it, the reason why people didn't want to do that or acknowledge that is because Goku mentioned Broly. Right? But that's the thing. Back in the Broly, when it first released, they had stated this. That Broly was a part of the story, but the story went off and split off into an alternate storyline, future. Right? The future had changed. It wasn't supposed to be something like that, but it happened. Right? Again, that's what a multiverse is. Multiverse is full of contradictions and things that's not going to make sense logically. That's the point. That is the whole point. That's how this writing shit be going. Right? That's why they always like, oh, we can always go back and correct this. Oh, we don't have to worry about that right now. We can worry about that later or anything like that. That's how it works, because in the multiverse, that's all that happens. Paradoxical events that happen. Time paradoxes, time inconsistencies, stories, illogical stories that, how is this happening? How is this butterfly effect happening? Wasn't this just supposed to happen right there, but it just went differently, but it's still going on? Right? That's how it works. Right? So the time period in that doesn't really matter right there, right? It just, at the time it happened, it's like, okay, well, you have to completely acknowledge that it is the same characters. Right? In the same story, it just end up splitting off, going off. But at some point, it diverges back onto the right track. Sometimes it don't. Sometimes it just goes off and goes into a whole nother ball of freaking universe ideas, so things like that, right? But it's still a part of the entirety of the story. It's still a part of the canon. It doesn't make it non-canon. None of that makes it non-canon. So what the heck? They're talking about all this hoopla and things like that or whatever. That doesn't matter. That's like the thing. It doesn't matter. Right. And then he actually, this is kind of funny. This person talks about Super Saiyan Bardock. Now, for me to go for Super Saiyan Bardock, the whole thing with Bardock Super Saiyan is the fact that that is a logical, that is a logical point in the story where he literally goes back in time. It's literally a time travel thing, right? So it could actually completely work in being in the canon, right? That's the thing. He goes back in time. Anytime you mess with dabble with time, forward in time, back in time, within the present, anything like that, that's what you get. Anytime you interact, that's what you get. That's why Zamasu was wrong when Gowasu had criticized Zamasu for interacting at all. It completely changed the future. Now, you didn't see any time ring or anything like that, be poof or anything like that, because again, the whole entire point of Future Trunks arc was to keep it contained to a point where you can still enjoy it. Now, let me tell you, in their head, when they're over there making it and stuff like that, they completely already knew that this infinite worlds and infinite history and all that going on. They already knew that it was going to be contradiction. They literally tell you this, sold you this before they released it. It was literally sold before they released it. People just forgot. I guess people just completely forgot. A lot of people, they probably just did not know, right? Because they're more casual, so they're not looking for these different news. So when you're seeing that, again, when you even go to Dragon Ball Daima and they even told you, oh, multiple universes, a whole lot more universes were created by Super Majorimas and everything, and they literally show you this, a lot of people was like, well, why do they keep saying only 3? Well, they're keeping it dumbed down for you because y'all are pretty much dumbos. I mean, they even show it to you several times. Not just in silhouette, but they actually shows you as soon as you go into the Portal Sama, or into Warp Sama. They straight up show you this. They just only had access to 3. Again. And then you go and you find out, who's the god over this. There was a god that created these one-shot mangas, those universes and everything. It's the same gods that is a part of Dragon Ball, right? Because how Tori I'm looking at it is everything is a part of Dragon Ball. That's why Son Goku is at the forefront. When you look at Journey to the West, you so many things that you could do at Journey to the West in general, right? Journey to the West is so flexible. You can get so many different stories in which you completely have. It's probably one of the most indie world in history stories that have been made from Journey to the West by itself. That's how flexible it is. But that's how that's how Dragon Ball completely is too. Right, and then you add all your own little elements and everything and stuff that Toriyama completely loved. That's how multiverse and everything stuff works. It's not that complicated to me. It might be complicated to you because you're trying to purposely keep it contained, or you probably just don't want to keep up with all of that. Again, that's why Kingdom Hearts is so confusing to a lot of different people when getting into it. They only care about the main line. Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is coming, right? And none of it makes sense to them. That's because they won't take the time out to go and dabble into the other works, right? Kingdom Hearts Union, Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days, Kingdom Hearts Recoded, Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, Kingdom Hearts the Final Mixes, the Kingdom Hearts 2.8, which is the prologue to Kingdom Hearts 3. The Kingdom Hearts mangas. You have a lot of the Kingdom Hearts Orchestra, which is the musical. All of that is a part. All of that is a part. They only Kingdom Hearts rechain their memories. Literally, all of that is a part. It's like one of the things when people get into Disney, I'd be like, well, you should already if you're a big Disney fan, you should already kind of understand how this shit works. Nobody should be explaining this to you. right? It shouldn't be getting explained to you like that. Now, I ain't gonna lie, Disney do be fucking up a lot of shit though. They kind of fucked up Marvel versus Capcom a little bit, but and apparently they fucked over Star Wars a bit. But I don't like Clone Wars, so I don't really care. So I mean, when you just look at it, it's just like you kind of should already have a great idea of how it works. But yet again, majority of you, I mean, y'all don't have any real understanding of how this shit really works, right? A lot of the movie teams, like Marvel movie team, DC constantly restart because they just can't get it right. But a lot of the movie, they been caught on, they understand it, right? Because guess what? All of these motherfuckers are geeks, nerds. Right? That's exactly what all of them are. Including me. I am a geek. I'm not a nerd. I am a geek. Y'all don't even realize that. Y'all stereotype so much and don't even realize a lot of the people that y'all admire and look up to, they are geeks. The very thing that y'all stereotype. So anyway, that's just going on. That's a bunch of extra shit. For the most part, will we see all of these things interact? Maybe not. Maybe not. They could. That's up to them. If it was someone like me, for example, right? I know exactly how I do this. Right, with Toyo's interview and Torishima interview, and Torishima seems to be very happy. By the way, I remember seeing certain videos that were recorded and seeing what he was so happy, and it seemed like Nakatsu was kind of like, and Toyo was like, all happy, right? It seems more so Torishima was excited to give these news and stuff like that, right? It seemed very, very. It just seemed more like Nakatsu, like, I don't want to be in the middle of this. It's like they was prepared for something like this and ready for things like this. So, to me, it kind of, it really seemed more so they're motivated to do more Dragon Ball whenever they're ready. Now, I know also Bird has, Toriyama's family has a lot to do with this as well. I do know that too. From what's told to me, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's Shueisha that's holding it up. That's from what's told to me. But again, I'm also told Toriyama's family has a whole lot to do with it too. So, and from what I know, Sasuke Toriyama is one of the people that's involved too. And from what I know, he kind of has the same line of thinking as I do. From what I know. He has the same line of thinking. So does Toyotaro. So, you have to, I don't know what to tell all you. I've been telling y'all this shit since I was like 7 years old. I've been on it. For a lot of y'all that don't know me, I've been on here debating for Dragon Ball and a lot of other things for the longest, right? Since Devil May Cry. Like, I don't know. I'm just a huge, I really love all of their works. Capcom, I really love, Shonen Jump. I just love it all. I just love it all. I mean, the Eastern works is just really good. I like the Eastern works. Now, I've been on the internet since like 2001, 2002. That's when my parents first got a PC, and that's when also during the time, Deep Desktop, a lot of people did not It was like very, it was like a luxury. It was like a super luxury. It was a super rarity if you had a PC. Not only that, we also had like a little VR thing. Y'all probably don't even know from back then. There was a VR. A lot of y'all not gonna know. There was a VR back then. There was a complete VR back then. And it was kind of funny. My brothers they had one, and I used to mess around with that too. But I've been on for that long. Also been in the music since long as like two, so I've been saying these things. That's pretty much my point. I've been saying this stuff for the longest. None of this is like a surprise. Only thing that I be trying to get is to everybody be on the same recording, because I know what people try to do. They're so behind. They're so far behind. But regardless, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Is this interview, and a lot of people, they're still going to argue over this even after this is all said and done. They're still going to argue about this. Very first thing they're going to argue is personal view. So they're still going to argue about this. But I'm telling you, what I just told you is the most logical, the most way that you should go forward with it. Because if you go in and turns it back and you start trying to think too much on it, too hard about it, you're going to lose yourself, or you're going to start limiting things or anything like that. Now, a lot of people are trying to limit it on purpose. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people, they don't give a damn. They know all of this shit. They're trying to limit it on purpose. Purposely. They trying to limit it. So you have to think about that too. That they don't care about anything that you said, or they're going to limit it on purpose because they either don't like, they dislike Dragon Ball, or they're sick of Dragon Ball having all the popularity or something like that. They don't want Dragon Ball to be as big. But clearly Dragon Ball is big. It's heavily influential. Dragon Ball is also in everything. Right? So again, the correct order: Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Z Kai, Dragon Ball Daima, Dragon Ball Super. GT is a what if, pretty much. And then you have all the movies and everything dealing with Z. Now how Toriyama was looking at everything is all Dragon Ball. Pretty sure he don't put no labels on anything. It's just all Dragon Ball. Right? And you got Dragon Ball Online fits in as well. Dealing with after Dragon Ball Z, during all everything, pretty much. Let me tell you, dude, everything after Boo, you get a whole lot. Everything after Boo, you get a whole lot. That's why I said this last sentence in short. There's no continuity to a timeline. Period. He just mean there's no canon. Period. I don't know why whoever typed this up put there is no continuity to timeline, because clearly we have continuity and clearly we have timelines, right? But if, again, by continuity he means all Dragon Ball, that's exactly how Toriyama actually does think. Like, everything is just Dragon Ball. There's actually no Z, Super, GT, anything like. It's just all Dragon Ball. That's how he writes, which is completely correct. That's how he's supposed to write. Right? That's exactly how he's supposed to write. So that's all I got for y'all today. Appreciate anybody that was in here, and appreciate everybody that comes and check the live stream after it.